introduce you. So welcome everyone to the next installment of our Appalachian Natural History Seminar Series. Today we are joined by Dr. Patrick Angel. I'm trying to remember the first time I met you. It's probably going up to Bent Mountain for my master's work, which was your doctoral work. In Pike County, yeah. So I'm thankful to have known Dr. Angel for a long time. How long? Probably 10 years now.
Yeah.
So I appreciated your career and all of your mentorship, and so thankful for you to be here to join us today. Dr. Angel got his bachelor's and master's in forestry from UK, and then came back for a PhD in 2008, a PhD in soil science, and his emphasis, his focus was on reforestation of surface mine sites in the Appalachia. And you worked for 41 years for the Office of Surface Mine and Reclamation and Enforcement. Dr. Angel was one of the first enforcers for the Office of Surface Mining. Badge number 2, he has the distinction of issuing the first cessation order under the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, which we've talked about in class. So you'll have to tell us more about that. And you issued that order when there was a landslide sliding into somebody's home while the folks who lived in the home were running out the front door. So please, we'll look forward to hearing more about that. So Dr. Angel has a long and storied career. He's done an incredible amount of good for Appalachian natural resources. So we're really honored and privileged to have you in class today. Thanks for your time. I'll go ahead and throw your talk up on the screen and share it to any colleagues who might join us via Zoom. You should be ready to go whenever.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sena, for inviting me and giving me a warm welcome like that, introduction. This is an honor to be here. Really appreciate this opportunity. I know that we have a couple of folks here from Eastern Kentucky. I'm from Eastern Kentucky myself. I'm from a little place called Viper up in Perry County, Kentucky, near Hazard, just down the road from Rowdy, across the mountain from Hell for Certain. This is a rough place where I come from. But, you know, those of us from Eastern Kentucky, those of us studying Appalachia, have heard about all the problems associated with you know, the socioeconomic issues of the region. You know, you got poverty, extreme poverty. You've got the opioid crisis and addiction crisis. You've got crooked politicians. I mean, you know, you can go on and on with health problems, social problems, environmental problems. And you got attitudes, you got stereotypes, you got people, you know, calling us ignorant hillbillies, you know, and making fun of us and so forth, and then you got natural resource exploitation, and that's kind of the you know, the arena in which I've worked all of my professional career. Environmental protection, you know, people taking advantage of other people up in the mountains, usually people from out of state, you know, coming into Eastern Kentucky and you know, extracting coal, timber, natural gas, oil, all kinds of natural resources, and then disappearing and leaving the people of Eastern Kentucky kind of holding the bag. So it's, you know, when you start talking about surface mines, the title of my presentation is The Productivity Potential of Reclaimed Surface Mines in Appalachia. It's kind of ironic when you think about the coal surface mining industry in Appalachia creating a natural resource. Well, I don't know if you want to call it a natural resource, maybe an artificial resource, okay? And that is a vast acreage of highly productive land for certain kinds of land uses. Kind of ironic that the coal industry has created this artificial natural resource, I guess you could call it. So let's jump into what I have to say about all this. Oh, there we have a scene close to the Cumberland Gap in Bell County, Kentucky, where Daniel Boone and Dr. Thomas Walker came through this pass, okay, from Virginia into what is now known as Kentucky. And this is kind of like the scene that they would have seen, you know, an untouched forest, a verdant, you know, healthy, productive forest that is just continuous, a continuous sea of forest land. At one time, a squirrel could travel from the beaches of the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Mississippi River without once touching the ground. It was a continuous sea of forest vegetation. Kind of what they saw in like 1780, 1790 when they were coming through the Cumberland Gap. We're starting out with a history lesson. And what I want to say to you right off the bat is before King Coal, before coal grabbed the throat of Eastern Kentucky and started squeezing on it, the mountains of Eastern Kentucky had an agrarian / forestry-based economy. Okay, fancy word. Somebody look up the word. Google it. Agrarian. What does it say? What's the definition of agrarian? Quickly. You can do this. Agrarian. Okay, go ahead. Read it.
Relating to cultivated land for the cultivation of land.
Okay, all right. It's kind of a, you know, an agricultural-based, agrarian, forestry-based economy. Before there was laws that contained livestock within fences, there was free-ranging cattle, hogs, sheep, goats, and so forth, grazing on the hillside pastures and bottomland pastures of Appalachia, of Eastern Kentucky. Okay, now they were fattened up on acorns and the understory, primarily though, from this marvelous tree called the American chestnut. Have you all talked about that yet? Okay, all right. So you know about the American chestnut. And the forest provided a wealth of products and services in terms of timber, in terms of wood fiber, in terms of the mast that would fall for the livestock and so forth. And the people of Eastern Kentucky, the people of Appalachia, as a result of these resources that haven't been exploited yet, they were very proudly independent and self-sufficient. This is a photograph that was taken in around 1935. I think the Model T Ford was cropped out on this photo, but you could date it from, you know, that car that is no longer in the picture. This is the Cortez family sheep farm up in Harlan County, Kentucky. It is still an operating sheep farm, okay? Now, across the mountains of Eastern Kentucky, sheep were a big thing. So much so that Kentucky was the second largest sheep producing state in the nation. And before there was Kentucky Fried Chicken, there was something known as Kentucky Spring Lamb. So people would raise sheep in the mountains of Eastern Kentucky. They would get fattened up on this rain of protein coming out of, you know, the American chestnut trees. And it was a big thing. It was really a big thing. At the turn of the last century, You could go into 5-star restaurants in Boston, Philadelphia, and New York. You can go into fine dining restaurants, across the Eastern Seaboard. And at the top of the menu, you'd see these 3 words: Kentucky Spring Lamb. Now, Eastern Kentucky was famous for growing lamb because of the chestnuts and the forage in the understory of the forest. And the bluegrass up here in Fayette County, Kentucky, Clark County, Jasmine County, was famous for growing big bone cattle and thoroughbred racehorses, right? So you had this dichotomy. You had the, big farm animals here in central Kentucky, and then you had the small ruminants, goats and sheep, in the mountains, which made a whole lot more sense. And Kentucky Spring Lamb turned out to be really a big thing back at the turn of the last century. In addition to free-range livestock, of course, there was, these big forests. This is a picture that was taken at the turn of the last century. This is American chestnut. I think these are yellow poplar. Not sure about that. It's hard to tell, but you could see huge timber, like right here. This photograph was taken like in 1910. This is me here, sitting right here in the center. And this is an American chestnut. The American chestnut was the largest growing tree in the eastern United States. It was the redwood of the East, okay? And you can see, oh my goodness, how would you get that thing out? When you only had mules and horses to pull it off the hill. So here's a photograph of the chestnuts. Have you shown this to them yet? This is a pile of chestnuts at the railhead, at a railroad station in eastern Kentucky, where people would gather up these chestnuts in baskets and they would bring them to the train station. They would weigh them and they would sell them to, an entrepreneur who was going to ship them on the train from eastern Kentucky to Boston or to New York, where and this is right before Christmas, okay? Because there was this big tradition back then. You've heard the song, roasted chestnuts on an open fire and all that. People would go shopping for Christmas gifts, starting a month before Christmas Day, and they would go to these stores and they would, let's get us some chestnuts that's being roasted right here on the curb, in front of the store. That was a big deal, okay? So then, of course, the chestnuts died out, which, what the story is there. But even today, the Appalachian forestry industry is very prominent. Wood products across Appalachia, there's 1,300 manufacturing facilities. It employs close to 200,000, almost 250,000 people in the forest industry. The economic output is 54 billion annually. And, we could sit and talk about all kinds of forest products and services, ranging from, wood fiber and water quality and yield and flood control and carbon sequestration, on and on. Let's go back to sheep. Now, this is what's happening in eastern Kentucky right now. Here's a farm on a hillside with Katahdin sheep grazing. And if you look at, deep into the mountains, like Letcher County, where Letcher County is, just up the river from Perry, right? There's these narrow valleys, narrow hollers, what they call narrow hollers. And in there, you'll find they're hidden away. It's like flocks of sheep all over the place. There's like 1,000 sheep farms throughout eastern Kentucky that range anywhere from 5 sheep up to 200, 300 sheep, okay? And, they're in the small little narrow hollers, and they're in the big wide valleys of Laurel County and Pulaski County and so forth. So there is a thriving sheep industry, and it's really getting a big deal now because the prices of sheep are just like skyrocketing, really crazy. Back in the 70s when I was raising sheep, the price was like 14, 15 cents a pound on the hoof. Right now it's like $4 or $5 on the hoof, and it's going crazy. So much better than, like, for instance, cattle. Okay, here we go again with a scene of the mountains in their undisturbed state. Viewscapes like this are rare in eastern Kentucky. You can find them, you know, you turn your camera over to here and screen out all of this, you know, bad looking area over there, and there, you know, you take a photo at that angle and okay, that's what eastern Kentucky should look like. But unfortunately, this is what you see quite a lot. This is a mountaintop removal surface mine in Pike County, Kentucky, you know, close to where you live, right? You know, basically it's, you know, the mountains have been taken down to expose the coal seams to be extracted. Now, Dr. Sena mentioned that when I was first starting my professional career, one of the first things I had to do was to shut down a coal company under the federal law. It was the first cessation order issued by the federal government in 1978. And I was in my 20s, he was a young guy, you know, and I'm scared to death, and I'm shaking, you know, I was sent out there, my badge number is number 2, like Dr. Sena said, and I was ordered to shut down this coal company in Harlan County, Kentucky, that had created this landslide. You can see it right here. This is an old 35 millimeter slide for, you know, image. I had to convert to digital. So it's not very clear, but here you have a slide coming from the hazard number 9 coal seam, sliding all the way down the hill, a landslide. I mean, really big devastation, all the way down the hill into the back of an occupied dwelling as the occupants were running out the front door, okay? This is what was happening in the 50s and 1960s and 1970s across the Commonwealth of Eastern Kentucky, or of Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Virginia and the state of Tennessee and West Virginia and parts of Ohio and parts of Pennsylvania, wherever the coal fields were in Appalachia. People were really being hit pretty hard by this out of control industry. Western Kentucky, Southern Indiana, Illinois, other places flatter than the steep slopes of Eastern Kentucky also suffered from this out of control industry. This is actually Western Kentucky, Muhlenberg County. No, anybody know John Prime? Raise your hand if you do. Who John Prime? Okay, you're going to have to play Paradise for him sometime. Okay. This is actually Paradise, Kentucky, or where Paradise was at one time. Mr. Peabody's coal train came in and hauled it away. So please play that song for him, okay? That photograph was taken by me in a helicopter like in 1977, and that's the where the little town of Paradise laid at one time. And you know, there's all kinds of social. Did you talk about the broad form deed yet? Okay, so write this name down. He's going to ask, give you a pop quiz. The widow Ollie Combs, O-L-I-E, Combs, not County, Kentucky. I won't get into this very much. You may, who knows about this story? Okay, look it up on the internet, listen, just read it, figure it out. The broad form deed is an issue that is still plaguing us today. The broad form deed, this widow woman was being carried off. Look at the symbolism here. You got a Kentucky state policeman and the sheriff of Knott County, Kentucky, and a coal operator in tow, literally carrying this fragile widow woman off of her own land because the coal operator could exercise his rights under the broad form deed to mine that coal under her land, whether she wanted to or not. Look that up and get an idea of what's happening, what has happened across the coal fields of Appalachia for a very long time. So let's talk about the mechanics of surface mining. Here's a little sketch that shows how a surface mine operates. You got this mountain with coal seams in it, right? Multiple seams. And the first thing, number one there, is to take all the vegetation off. Sometimes that vegetation is veneer quality white oak, yellow poplar, black walnut, which is worthless compared to the coal. And it's pushed aside, pushed under, pushed away, okay? All of those resources are wasted. I've never in my 50 years of working on surface mining seen a logging operation working in advance of the surface mine to recover the wood fiber, to recover the timber in advance of the mining operation, because they go too slow and the mining operator goes too fast and they just can't keep up with it. The second thing, number two here, is for the mine operator to drill holes down into the mountain, okay, load it with what's known as ANFO, A-N-F-O. That's an abbreviation for ammonium nitrate and fuel oil. Mix that together, put a spark to it, and it blows up, right? And loosens all of the mountain to where, number three, that loose rock and material, now called spoil, S-P-O-I-L, is pushed out of the way into these hollers and valleys, creating what's known as a valley fill or a hollow fill, right? Creating these big, high walls, called high walls, and exposing the coal seam, which is then carried away. The last step after filling up the hollers is to do the reclamation. And basically, you know, what you have is surface mining before and then surface mining after. So you see, now you have the top of a mountain kind of like whacked off and pushed off to the side to create this flat, gently rolling terrain, kind of like a plateau or a mesa on top of the mountain. It's called a mountaintop removal operation. Now there's other ways to do it. There's conventional contour strip mines and area mines and auger mines and all that kind of stuff. But this is the big mining complexes in Pike County, Kentucky, Martin County, Kentucky. Have you been to Martiki? So you know what I'm talking about, right? It's an entirely different landscape altogether. And so the federal government, during the administration of Jimmy Carter, said enough is enough. We're going to regulate the coal surface mining industry in America. And they created a law called the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, which you've heard about before. SMACRA is the acronym, right? 1977, I was in the Rose Garden when it was signed by Jimmy Carter. And it was a landmark environmental law pushed by Morris Udall at the time. And there was a lot of compromises made. So many so that there's loopholes in that law that's crazy. You could drive a coal truck through some of those loopholes. Anyway, It created an agency that I worked for 41 years, called the Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation Enforcement. And it pretty much regulated, the mining industry to where, you could see these big mountaintop removal operations green again. Here's a hollow fill. Here's where the coal seam was at one time. You can see the contrast between how this looks and how that looks over there, undisturbed. There's something missing here. What's missing? Tell me, what do you not see in that, on that mountaintop removal operation? Trees. That's right. You don't see trees, and you will not see trees. And it's going to be a very, very long time before you see trees for several reasons. I want you to try to figure out what the first reason, most prominent reason is why trees will not grow on reclaimed surface mines. And here's your clue. You can look here and you can see right before your very eyes why trees will not grow if you can decipher the clue. What is it? What is the reason why trees will not grow? Let's see what we got. You're right. Okay, the heavy, you could tell that. You could tell that this mine spoil has been compacted really, really tight by the tread marks, right? You see the tread marks of the bulldozer? A bulldozer weighs, write this down, this is part of the quiz that you're going to get. A bulldozer weighs 52 tons. And so you can see what the bulldozer operator did here, right? You hit the nail right on the head. All of this traffic up and down this slope compacted the mine soils to the point where tree roots and vegetation will have a very difficult time to penetrate the ground, to penetrate that growth medium. Think about it. What's the first thing you do in the springtime when you want to plant a garden? Yes. You till it up. Exactly. You plow up the ground. You loosen it. You get it so loose so that the tomato plants, when you put them in the ground, will be able to send their roots down and exploit all those nutrients and minerals and water and so forth that's in that growth medium. It's the same thing. Tomatoes, trees are not very much different than tomatoes in terms of the requirements they have for a rooting material to put their roots through a growth medium. So that's very good. That's the first reason. The second reason why trees have difficulty in growing. Kenton. Okay, second reason is right here. What's the second reason? Yeah. Yeah, you're getting right to the point. See how thick this vegetation is? Okay, these are non-native, exotic grasses and legumes. Things like Cerisa lespedeza and shrubs like autumn olive and so forth. Now, if I were to try to plant a 16, 18-inch long bare root tree seedling, I'd have to get out there and walk through all this stuff and just start spreading it apart and get down to the ground, get a dibble bar, punch it down into that and kind of wiggle it, and then all that vegetation just comes back up again. These are really exotic, non-native, alien species from the planet Zargon that you cannot plant trees in because they will smother the little tree seeds. Very good. Good point. Okay, so this is what a lot of the land that's been reclaimed in the coal fields looks like. It's in a state of arrested natural succession. Meaning that Mother Nature will have trouble seeding in trees on her own, okay, without some serious costly mitigation by humans. So working for the federal government, you know, as a soil scientist and a forest, I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to solve this problem? It's been 30 years since Jimmy Carter signed that law, that bill into law, and now look at all of this reclaimed surface mines that basically are useless. They can't grow forest. Now, they were reclaimed with a specific purpose of creating hay and pasture land, right? Post-mining land use was specifically reclaimed by the mine operator to put livestock on, okay? In behalf of the landowner. But across the board, very few cattle operations have been utilizing, you know, this ground. And so, you know, the best idea would be to fix these problems of compaction and competition from exotics in a way where trees could grow. And so we turned to the scientists and we tried to recruit, you know, the state regulatory authorities. The Appalachian Regional Commission, Regional Reforestation Initiative is an effort to restore healthy, productive forests on mine lands. It's a joint effort between the agency I work for and the Appalachian coal states, Virginia, Kentucky, Maryland, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and the federal government. Our goals were very simple and straightforward: plant more high-value hardwood trees, increase the survival and rates and growth rates of those planted trees, and expedite the establishment of forest habitat through natural succession. We studied the FRA, haven't we? This
We
is
talked about it, yes.
the FRA, the Forestry Reclamation approach, is what the scientists here at the University of Kentucky, Virginia Tech, West Virginia University, University of Tennessee gave us. It's a science-based approach. You got to have at least 4 feet of suitable growth material. You got to minimize compaction. You got to limit the ground cover. You got to plant a variety of hardwood tree species, and you got to plant those trees properly. A lot of science behind this. Most of it came out of UK, just down the road here at the Forestry building. Land breaking research on how to grow trees on surface mines. So here I am, you know, with this science, the knowledge of how to do this, and I have to convince an industry and state regulators across the coal fields to do it. Oh, so we employed every trick in the book. We created Arbor Day events, and we got the governor to sign support for it, and we started giving away awards, and we created videos and went on TV and did radio spots and wrote newspaper articles and just on and on, just trying our best, you know, to convince the industry and the landowners and the folks to plant trees instead of, you know, the old style of reclamation. We had partnerships with the American Chestnut people and the bird people. They loved us. And as a result, since 2005, we've planted close to 200 million trees on something on the order of 250,000 acres. Active mining. This is the active mining industry. We had to stop the bleeding. We had to stop them from creating all of this grass wasteland and start doing the forestry reclamation approach in a proper way. And so we pretty much succeeded in getting the active industry to do the right thing and plant trees. And if they did, you could have the forest back instead of that arrested natural succession. This is a forest planted in East Tennessee with this forestry reclamation approach technique. And you can see now that the trees grew, oh, actually the trees were conifers that grew up. They were pine trees that grew up, matured, and then was replaced by a hardwood forest with all of this healthy understory. I know that this is a healthy, productive forest because you walk through there and you see mosses, you see ferns, you see, plant life that you wonder, how did that ginseng plant get here? This was a strip mine just 40 years ago. How did that bloodroot get here? How did that, Virginia creeper, where did that come from? Where's the ginseng? Mother Nature is so resilient. Oh my God, you just give her half of a chance. Loose growth soil material, no competition from exotics, and she will respond in a way that's really remarkable. The University of Kentucky led this. This is the Starfire Mine site in Perry County, Kentucky, Knott County, Breathitt County, Kentucky, close to Robinson Forest. You know where that is. They planted these trees with the forestry reclamation in mind, forestry reclamation approach in mind, and now it's a healthy, productive forest that's remarkable. You look across this landscape, this mountaintop removal operation, and you think to yourself, is this Kentucky? Can it be Kentucky? Can it be East Tennessee, Virginia, Southwest Virginia, West Virginia? Because it's flat and there's no trees. It looks like the prairie of Montana. It looks like the prairie of North Dakota, South Dakota. But it's a reclaimed mountaintop removal in Pike County, Kentucky. You see what we've done. We've turned everything upside down in this ecosystem. It's now a prairie instead of a verdant mesophytic forest that was there before. And it was reclaimed, like I've said, to unused hay and pasture land. That was the post-mining land use, but it's not being used for that. Where once there were forests, there's now something on the order of 675,000 acres of unused hay and pasture land in East Kentucky alone, in need of trees or sheep. Where once were forests across Appalachia, there's close to 1 million acres of grass wasteland across the coal fields of Appalachia. Now look, if we put sheep and goats on land like this, we could rival the largest state, the largest sheep producing state in the nation. That's Texas. Wouldn't you like to beat Texas on something, right? That would be awesome if that's why I'm saying there's a productivity potential here on reclaimed surface mines for forestry and for small ruminant agriculture. That is really awesome. So when I retired from the federal government, I went nuts. And I said, well, I got to have something to do. So I created this little sheep club, right? For the mountain. What a crazy thing to do. All right, we call it the Southeast Kentucky Sheep Producers Association. And our goal is to bring Kentucky spring lamb back to the mountains of Eastern Kentucky on mined land. Well, we got a website, all the things that you would do if you had a little club. But let me tell you, this little club has grown like the little engine that could. Oh my God, we've got hundreds of members signing up for this thing, primarily because the prices of lamb are so high right now. And you can see, people are putting up signs. We got a trademark, by the way. We paid a lawyer to get a trademark called KSL. And Kentucky Spring Lamb now is our way to help mountain people help themselves on the land that they have. It doesn't have to be a strip mine. It could be, you know, the old side pasture up in the holler. It could be on a bottom land next, you know, soils next to a river, you know, the Elkhorn River, the Kentucky River, whatever out there in the eastern, some of the richest soils in the world are in the bottomlands of eastern Kentucky. So we got this trademark, KSL. We put it in the ears of the sheep, and we sell the sheep and turn them into lamb. Honey, has anybody ever eaten any lamb? Try it. Try it. You might like it. You know, if you're okay, been raised on pork all my life, on hamburger all my life. It may be a little, but give it a chance. Give it a chance. Lamb is so delicious. So here's my vision. A band of sheep. Normally you say, you know, a bunch of sheep is called a flock, right? But when you have 800 or 1,000 or 3,000 sheep, they call it a band. And the model here now is what they do in the Rocky Mountains or in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania, or in the Basque Mountains of Spain and Portugal. They take 800 sheep and a bunch of herding dogs and a bunch of guarding dogs and a mule pulling, you know, a little sheep wagon, a little place to live. They go to the top of these alpine meadows and they herd these sheep. They just watch them 24/7. Shoot a bear. Here comes some wolves. Go get the dogs there. You know, oh, they're getting over it to the cliff. Get the dogs, bring them back. You know, they work 24/7. I mean, if I was in my 20s or 30s, I'd say, sign me up. I want to do this. I want to be out there. Wouldn't that be so much fun? You know, I might have to have a satellite TV, you know, your little sheep wagon. But can you imagine what that would be like up in Martin County, Kentucky? Do you know anybody who might do this for me? Or over in Pike County on a big mountaintop removal operation. Wouldn't that be fun? Let's go do this. I think it's a wonderful idea for proving the point that Kentucky spring lamb can come back to the mountains of eastern Kentucky and be an economic driving force for the people up there. If they're not raising sheep and goats and small ruminants on the land that's there, in a sustainable way to return ourselves back to this agrarian forestry-based economy. That's sustainable and environmentally correct, you know. And I don't know what else is. So in the springtime, you till up the garden. That's what you said, right? Till up the garden. You use one of those things that you walk on, till into the, right? Tiller. Here is the tiller that you have to use on the strip. A D9 dozer. How much does it weigh? 52 tons, right. Okay, so this is the first time we did this back about 15 years ago. Just kind of playing around with how are we going to break up this compaction. So we get this big hook, this ripping tool, ripping bar on the back of the D9 dozer that weighs 52 tons. And we sink it. How long is it? How long is that ripping bar? It's got to be how long? 4 feet. That was FRA step number 1. You got to have 4 feet to grow a tree. You stick it in the ground, you rip the ground, and you do your best to, you know, break up that compaction. Now, when we first started doing this, we only went in one direction. And we planted the trees, you know, down those furrows, down those rips. And they did pretty well. They grew. The compaction didn't stop it. They grew up, and when they got big enough for the wind to hit it, they all toppled over. Windfall. So we were thinking, well, why did that happen? Well, the roots grew just down the rips. You know, they couldn't grow out this way. They just went in one direction. So they all toppled over. What's the correct? What do you do to solve that problem? There you go. You cross rip it. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is not, this is not nuclear physics. This is basic soil science physics, so you cross rip it. Where do you plant the trees? In the intersection of the rip. Yeah, it's just pretty simple. Now that solved the problem. It took us 5 years to figure that one out. Okay, so we're going in a new direction. We're working on the 1 million acres of reclaimed grass and shrublands through a nonprofit called Green Forest Work, based here on the campus of the University of Kentucky. It's a CCC model program to stimulate the economy and to improve the environment. We're wanting to plant millions of trees on thousands of acres of degraded land and create green jobs in the process. Over the past 13 years, we've planted close to 4 million trees on 6,000 acres using volunteer labor more than anything. Here's all the universities and colleges and high schools that have done this. Look for the UK right there in the center. And so we teach people how to plant trees. Get a forester out there with a dibble bar, that's what that's called. And we teach them how to plant a tree. And we recruit folks all over Appalachia, Ohio, Tennessee, and West Virginia, and Southwest Virginia, young and old folks, even in the snow and the rain and so forth, on steep slopes. And 11-year-old girl sent me this haiku after one of those tree planting. Oh, it just broke my heart. I loved it. She said, folks argue in the road. You see, she came from a family where the father was a coal miner and the children were anti-coal, and they argued at the supper table all the time. So she wrote, folks argue in road while old man steps around them on way to plant trees. I guess she was calling me the old man. Anyway, okay, we can go nuts with Chinese proverbs, and all kinds of idealistic things. But look, I need for you to come on April 9th to the Daniel Boone National Forest in Pulaski County, Kentucky, and help us plant 2,800 trees. I'll be there. Claudia Cotton will be there. She was here last week, right? We'll all be down there. We'll teach you how to plant trees. You teach a kid how to fish, and then he can feed himself for the rest of his life, right? Well, if you learn how to plant trees, then what? Maybe you can breathe for the rest of your life. I don't know. Okay, so that's my presentation. Thank you, folks, very much. We've got 2 minutes for questions. 2 minutes. Give me a question. Yes, sir.
As a way of convincing necessity of change, why do you think it's important to focus research on the economic benefits of said change as compared to simply the natural well-being of the future of these areas? And what do you think this says about people in these areas?
Wow. I don't know if I can answer that question. Okay, boil the cabbage down for me. What are you wanting me to answer?
Why do you think it's important to focus on like, the economic benefits?
Oh, good point. Good question. Economic benefits. Well, if there's no money in it, people are not going to do it, right? If there's no advantage to people doing it, then why would they do it? There's idealistic folks around who will do something just for the idealism of it, but then what really drives people to do things, to make changes, is how it's going to help them in a material way. I don't know. Can you help me with that question? That's a tough one.
It's a good question. Yeah. Why? I mean, the world runs on money, right? So like if it's not economically feasible to do something, it's not going to happen. All y'all business could tell us that, right? You have to, if you want to propose something to a landowner or a company, they're not going to do it if it's going to cost them money, right? If it's going to raise their bottom line or whatever, however, raise it or lower it or whatever. If it's not going to be economically feasible or advantageous, they're probably not going to do it.
Good question. Very good question. We got a question here on the screen is there sheep and trees or hay and trees on the same paddock and stand? Yeah, sheep will eat trees and goats will certainly eat trees if they're, within reach. So what we are advocating in terms of agroforestry on surface mines is that you plant trees on those areas of the surface mine that make sense, and then you raise sheep or goats on different areas that make sense, and you keep them apart until they can be combined. These mine sites are so big, we're talking 5,000, 10,000 acres in one tract. The environments are so diverse, different slopes, different soils, different water regimes and so forth, that you can choose and pick where you're going to grow trees and where you're going to grow sheep, and not combine them with fencing and so forth. So, yeah.
We are out of time. Let's give our speaker another round of applause.
Okay.
You are welcome to hang out and ask Dr. Angel any other questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share and stop the recording.